Well, very good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Avantis, Regtech, and Team Leads, I welcome you to yet another edition of our webinar. This time, the topic of our webinar is rebooting your compliance management with digitalization. Before I commence the discussion today, I hope all of you, your loved ones, your friends, your families are doing well. I can only pray. We're all going through an unusual situation, a serious health crisis. Please stay home. Please stay away from danger. So with that said, I'm really excited today to host yet another panel, a panel of experts, three of them practitioners, between them over 60 years of collective experience managing various critical business processes and organizations, particularly revolving around compliance. Let me start out with a quick introduction. With me today, I have Vallari Gupte, who's a General Manager and Company Secretary, Compliance Officer at CEAT Limited, an RPG group company. She's also a member of the ESG Council of CEAT, leads the Center of Excellence for Legal and Secretarial Functions of the RPG group companies. She has a total experience of over 17 years in corporate secretarial, legal departments of various multinational companies and listed companies such as Bajaj Holdings, WNS, Global Services, Tech Mahindra, KPIT Technologies, and Thermax. She has recently been awarded the Icon of the Quarter Award by CEAT for her contributions towards successful launch of the Maiden Integrated Annual Report of the CEAT for 1920. Welcome, Vallari.
Thank you.
We also have with us Saurabh Kasat. Saurabh is a gold medalist in finance from Nirma University. He's an enthusiastic professional with about 15 years of experience in finance, strategy, and investment banking. He has worked across various old economy and emerging sectors. For the last 7 odd years, he has been working in retail and consumer product sector. Saurabh has been working as a CFO with Dairy Day Ice Creams, one of the top 10 ice cream brands in India, and is currently based in Bangalore. Saurabh handled strategy and finance at Dairy Day. Prior to that, Saurabh worked in E&Y, investment banking teams, for about 8 years, where he used to handle retail and consumer products across South India. Welcome, Saurabh.
Thank you.
And our last panelist for the day is Sumanta Brahamachari. Sumanta is a qualified accountant with more than 25 years of experience in business planning, finance, accounting, MIS, tax, mergers of listed entities. He's played a key role in demerger of Ariba, was pivotal to the public issue of Adani Power as well, and plays an important role in the setting up of Fischer India. Sumanta has many core competencies around public issue, post-merger, demerger, contracts, tax, legal, setting up of new companies under various Companies Act, direct tax, indirect tax, and so on. He is a CMA and pursued an executive education on management from IIM Kolkata. Welcome, Suman.
Thank you. Thank you, Rishi.
So as you can see, we have a very exciting panel and an exciting discussion in the offing for us. Let's kick this off. I would want to take a first couple of minutes laying the context, and then we'll get into the lower level discussion. Moving on, as you all know, managing compliance in India is really complex. The country has a lot of acts and compliance. Here's a quick snapshot of that. India has an ecosystem of about 1,536 acts, leading to about 69,233 compliances, with about 6,618 filings across 7 broad categories. As you can see, labor is one of the largest, 30% in terms of acts and 47% in terms of compliances. Labor being a concurrent subject, both center and states legislate laws on labor, and we are seeing a serious action in this space right now with codification. 29 central acts are being condensed into 4 labor codes, and a lot of action is there. Center has already notified its rules. 8 states have already done various levels of notifications, and this space is something to watch out for. Followed by labor, there is EHS, stands for Environment, Health and Safety, deals with pollution control boards, CPCBs, PCBs, air, water, soil pollution norms, consent to establish, consent to operate, various kinds of rules under Environment Protection Act of 1986. All of that gets covered there. A typical factory establishment type would deal with a lot of EHS compliances. Finance and taxation, as the name suggests, deals with all kinds of direct tax, indirect tax, customs, FEMA, all the acts and rules, various advanced tax, income tax, GST, all of those fall there. Commercial deals with equipment, hoists, lifts, cranes, boilers, pressure vessels. When you deal with tools, tackles, weighing equipments, fire extinguishers, all of those are equipment types. Each one of them brings certain types of compliance obligations, either in terms of initial licenses or ongoing compliances. All of those fall under commercial. Secretarial, as the name suggests, are being dealt with by a company secretary, and we have a senior one right amongst us today responsible for managing all the secretarial functions of a listed company, a renowned company, and we'll hear more from her today. But secretarial is all about MCA, SEBI, NSE, BSE, and all company law matters, which are typically event-based compliances, unlike the time-triggered ones. Industry-specific deals with regulatory, with specific regulators responsible for specific sectors, telecom, TRI for telecom, IRDAI for insurance, RBI for financial services, NBFCs, and so on and so forth. All of those fall under telecom, under the industry specific. So as you can see, no single company does 69,233 compliances, but from a single entity, single business, single location, as a company becomes a multi-business, multi-location, and multi-locational entity, the compliance burden shoots up exponentially. Here's a quick heat map on overall compliance burden across states. Don't wish to go through this, but you can refer to it offline if you would like. Approximately 677 of the 1536 acts are central, with about 25,000 compliances among the 69,000 which fall in this category. Moving on, when we talk about compliance, and this, I want to set the stage in context. What do we mean by compliance? So any act, any section, any paragraph amongst the 1,536 acts which form the law of the land across central, state, and local laws is what we talk about in terms of statutory compliance. Typical illustrative examples, not exhaustive by any standard, are licenses, registrations, permissions, consent orders, returns, registers, challans, payments, remittances, displays, exemptions. All of these are examples of compliances that typical businesses deal with. Moving on, just a quick snapshot. Compliances are at 3 levels: central, state, and local. You heard me say that. 7 categories we already discussed. And then there are 3 types: time-based, event-based, and checklisted. So with this, let me open up our conversation today on digital and on the rebooting the compliance management program. And let's bring our panelists in. Let me first start with Vallari. Vallari, you've been managing compliances for a listed entity, for a large multi-locational listed entity with manufacturing in there. Tell us more about what are the typical challenges that you come across, what bothers you, what takes away the sleep at night, and what are the challenges in your role?
Hi, Rishi. So as you rightly said, manufacturing unit, and so it is spread across country. You have different locations. Beyond the manufacturing plants, you have the regional offices, zonal offices, corporate office. And with those locations, as you said, central act, state act, local act, there are n number of compliances. So certainly you cannot be present at each location to ensure that all the compliances are carried out. So being at a central location, say headquarters or the corporate office, and still to ensure that all the compliances are being done by the respective people, or to keep a track and report that to the management, is certainly a challenge. So that's one thing I would say that is certainly a big issue or a big challenge that such kind of an organization faces. And it's typical with the large setup, with the large number of locations. Of course, each location, or there would be certain people who are identified to ensure compliance. But to report that to the management, to report that to the certain authorities where you have to confirm that compliances have been carried out completely. That's the role and responsibility of company secretary compliance officer. And that's a challenge that typically one finds in such kind of a setup.
Excellent. Well, I could easily imagine a company of the size of CEAT with so many different types, categories, locations, states of operation. Couldn't expect anything less. Sumanta, you are the senior most amongst all of us. Have seen this world for almost quarter of a century. Tell us a little more about your experience. You've done a lot of work in this space, have been managing it closely, worked with both Indian and multinational organizations of various cultures and types. Walk us through your set of challenges that you've seen in managing compliance in organizations.
Yes, Valerie, yes, Rishi, what Valerie was telling, I completely support her. I have started my career in a listed company with a multi-locations place. Starting from 1995, 96, I have seen a lot of changes in the acts, way of doing business, the recent changes in GST. I have lucky to see the changes in the tax audit reporting, which came in 1998, where there is a three-page tax audit report now, which is a bigger one. So over the period of time, what I have seen that the compliance changes. There are the lot of acts in India are there. When we do that, we don't link those acts with our operation. That is the biggest challenge in the compliances. So even if you to see today, a sales guy for a negotiating contract where he doesn't see what is the contents of the contract, what is where the place of supply will be, because in the GST the place of supply is very important. He took a purchase order where the supply is defined from Bengal maybe, and ultimately he landed at supply from Maharashtra. Okay, so these are the things, what I see the day-to-day activity, why it is not there, because in our culture, the way we grown up, it is we have not taught like that. In the last 12 years I have worked with the Europeans, the Germans and French. Okay, basically I have seen that it is brought up in their culture itself. From the day one, before starting the job, they ensure that the compliance is at the right place. Okay, they ensure that whatever, because they believe in such a way, the everywhere, because if you see even our act, which is coming more of from the British era, so they believe that whatever you are doing, some compliance will be there in your country. Okay, you first check that compliance, whether it is there, because in this organization also we are working the different locations. Every state has a different thing. Even for a labor law compliance, payment in Tamil Nadu is different, payment in Maharashtra is different. So I think this is the culture, and as a head of the finance in an organization, I've seen this is a process that we need to imbibe in the different across the board, and it is very difficult. It is very difficult to satisfy to the board that I have done all the compliances. Even in my previous organization, I was working with the Snyder. I have seen a global demerger. We have to give a full checklist of the compliances signed by the controller, that yes, all the compliance has been done. Even there are multiple sites, okay, in our organization where the job work was going on. You have to give the certification whether contract labor regulation abolition that has been complied with or not. So these are the various changes, and I feel there is a changes coming, and big changes has came to the introduction of the GST, where people are becoming more compliant, where earlier it was not there. Even if you go to the small shop, you will get the GST number given outside the shop. So there is a mindset change is happening, and that is required to become much more effective.
Excellent. So basically, a clear point, Sumanta, that you make is there is a cultural difference between the Western world, how they perceive compliance, where it is not considered to be a guideline, it's not considered to be optional. It is something that you do and run your business by. That is a fundamental difference.
Absolutely,
You
absolutely.
continue
It's a,
to.
it's a, it's a, it's a, it's a, they imbibe a thing. It is a part and parcel of your life. You can't keep compliance separately and business separately. It can't. It need to go together. Okay. If you see all the compliance, whatever you have shown, Everything, every compliance is limited. I have seen the registration from the boiler when I was working in the manufacturing sector. I have seen the registration, various registration, deregistration at the time of merger, demerger of the listed company. Okay, when the global demerger, even if you won't believe, I can give you a very small example. We have a big contract with the state utility in government of West Bengal. The contract has been bifurcated globally with the electricity voltage level. So higher voltage go to Ascom, lower voltage going to Schneider. But in that contract, we have not differentiated, okay, how it will be. Okay, when we have finally executing the contract, okay, when the first particular complaint came, then you have seen that this has been missed out. So I have seen that this is a very, very important, and this comes on the transaction. You know, it is a in a culture you have to develop as a leader of the organization, that every transaction has a compliance. Every transaction has a compliance.
So culture is definitely a big one out there, which compliance officers struggle with, and I keep hearing this quite often. But I think the other thing that you're mentioning is the diversity, the type of rules, their interpretation, the type of forms, the procedures, all of those. There is a huge variety when you operate across states, which creates information asymmetry, which also creates differences in people's understanding of what needs to get done, and thereby inadvertently, in spite of best intentions, you end up being non-compliant. So I think the complexity, the inherent complexity in the way rules are written, they are interpreted, they are enforced, they are practiced, there's a huge transmission loss there, is what I'm hearing from you.
Yes, yes.
So let me
Okay.
quickly bring Saurabh into the conversation. Saurabh, a very impressive background. You've worked with consulting big fours. You've seen how M&As work. At the time of M&A, compliance, governance, risk management, all of these are critical parameters from a due diligence perspective. You've seen that. And now you've been a practitioner for quite some time, trying to do the same thing from the other side of the table. Tell us more about some of your journey, and especially what do you think are the key challenges in management of compliance based on your experience?
Yeah, thanks, Rishi. Just on the lighter side, when you are talking about 69,000 odd compliances, I just happened to check how many rows were there in Microsoft Excel 95, and there were just 16,000 rows. So the 69,000 will not even fit in there. Yeah, coming back to what I have been doing. So when I spent 8 years in the investment banking field, I was largely doing private equity and M&A transactions, and no deal will get closed without proper legal due diligence is carried out. And I have not seen a single deal where some or other issue has not come. Like whether it's a large deal or a small deal, in the legal diligence was the one that we were always afraid as an advisor that now what will come, because as an advisor, first of all, we are also not aware some other party will do the legal DD, and then eventually it will come out. And there have been so instances like like when we are advising some client, some manufacturing client in raising private equity, they were using borewell water, and the investor was a large international company. So they said that you need to have a license to use the borewell water. The client approached the local authority saying that we need the license, and local authority said, I don't know how to give the license. So those kind of instances have also come when we were actually doing some of these deals. But having said that, some of these standard compliances, let's say related to Companies Act or related to any other act, will invariably be missed, and companies ended up doing compounding, and sometimes it also become deal breaker. And so I have seen a scenario where compliance, not adhering to compliance, has a direct impact on the company in terms of, let's say, penalty or interest. It also has an indirect impact on the deal, and because of which probably company has suffered because they have not raised, let's say, money on time, or merger could not happen in time. And as Sumanta said, that anywhere the international parties are involved, there is no, it actually become a no negotiation kind of point. So it's a straight, it is very straight, either you are in or you are out kind of scenario. Coming back to, so after doing so many deals, and when I joined this company, Day Ice Cream, and where, other than finance, I was also handling the legal compliance part, I actually felt what are the challenges, let's say, a mid-sized company faces. Because first and foremost challenge, as you already told, there are tons of compliance, so we need to be aware what's happening. The second challenge really depends on, date wise, you have to monitor. So how do we, so you can appoint people, but ultimately human beings may tend to miss something. And here the missed compliance, the cost may be very, very high in these times, because as a country now, we are actually moving towards a complying kind of country. And GST is a fantastic example of that, as Sumanta mentioned. And so eventually now the onus is there on all the professionals like us, Sumanta sir, Vallari, that how do we ensure 100% compliance? And in that, probably the biggest challenge is keeping track of it and finishing it on time. And plus the understanding and interpreting, because since India is a wide country, some compliance may have a different interpretation in different states. So all these challenges are there, and hopefully technologies to some angle, it can actually solve this.
Sure. So interesting points there, Saurabh. Vallari, let me put you in a spot, a little bit of a spot here. So you are in this for a long time, worked with WNS, KPIT, Thermax, and now with CEAT, listed company. Tell us, in your last 17 odd years, what has changed in the boardroom conversations around compliance? Has the tone changed? Are the demands changing? The expectations changing on this?
Certainly, Rishi, that there's a lot of change. And so one thing we've always been talking about is corporate governance. And this corporate governance being from the top, the board obviously thinks about the level of governance, and that includes compliance at a large level. Because compliances with the laws that are applicable and ensuring that there are no non-compliances, no penalties, maybe not even notices being received, is the highest level of governance that the board wants to ensure. Maybe in the earlier period that I have seen in my earlier organizations, the conversation was more about setting the practices, setting the processes, or understanding where the gaps were and trying to bridge them. Maybe there are people who actually ensure compliances. Board would be only monitoring it, but to then bring those compliances, the interpretation and right mechanism so that there are no non-compliances was the talk earlier. Now, while I think most bigger organizations would have a system in place, I think the mid-scale companies still would be working on it to some extent, but now the tone is changing to ensure that from a large level of compliance, how can we ensure to 100% level of compliance, a zero non-compliance, zero fatalities or zero notices. As I said, that the last level is probably a criminal action or a legal suit. But when the board is also talking about the smallest level of non-compliance and ensuring that that does not happen, that's, I think, the tone that is changing in the boardrooms. And it is not just that they want an affirmation that, okay, everything is fine and going good, but certainly at a large extent, they do expect maybe a kind of MIS or a report which states that where there are areas of non-compliance, and non-compliance could be either inadvertent miss by someone, or there could be a fault by someone. There could be also an interpretational issue. So the board wants to understand that, take the right step, and going towards this 100% level of compliance is now the target of the board. I think that's the change that I would say is happening. And this, I would say, is at a very large level happening with most of the organizations who take it very seriously, who understand that the cost of compliance is higher than the non-compliance. So once they understand that, I think they are taking the right step towards it.
Very well said. The quote that I love is, if you think compliance is expensive, try non-compliance. So in India, last few years, fortunately or unfortunately, the cost of missed compliance, the cost of poor compliance, the cost of non-compliance has shot through the roof. What used to work in the past doesn't work anymore. And, as a leader at Avantis, I do have a unique opportunity of working with hundreds of executives through the course of the year. And one thing that stands out loud and clear is board is not just looking for a verbal confirmation that we are compliant. Board now seeks evidence-based confirmation that show me the evidence that you're compliant. And the problem begins right there, where people don't even have a list of compliances, forget actually complying with them. So the problem begins there. Sumanta, you want to comment on the fact that even having a baseline list of compliance is a big challenge, especially in the way we are currently operating as corporate India?
Yes, if you see, I can, what Valeria is telling, I faced this board music in 1996 first. Okay, so I joined in a company, in a listed company, and I have posted to a company taken over by BFI. So every quarterly board meeting, when you used to go, I was the sacrifice vote. I has to submit the list of the compliance with writing in the Excel that this has been done, this has been not been done, and this is the checklist. Over the period of time, I have seen when the companies have changed, the independent director came, all these things, the board's main focus was is basically today is on the compliance. All the numbers are there. Obviously, all the numbers are there. They see what are the risks are there, what are the non-compliant are there, which has been hidden behind the number. You don't know what shock you will get tomorrow if you get a notice. And that's why, the management is also interested to make it, handle it in a smart way, digitize it. Even if you see the government is also moving to highly towards that direction. Even the, the digitization in income tax assessment has been started. There is a good part and bad part of it. Okay, we have got some bad part of it, but I have got a notice from the department, and some of the assessment, some of the expense has been added back, which has not been done. But it's a journey. What I feel, it's a journey. Now for one assessment, I was reading the business standard that the company has moved to the high court for this thing. But what I feel that this process of the compliance, which has been making a paradigm shift over the period of last 4 5 years, and what I say, the GST is a unique example. People, here the problem is that we are afraid to doing compliance. Okay, that is also another thing. We afraid if the income tax notice come, you have to show, go to the government officer, what he will ask. Okay, what other things will do, but it is not the case. Once you start complying this, it is a very easy thing, but you need to be bit systematic. Out of 68,000 things, what Saurabh was telling, yes, it is not a thing. You have to understand what is applicable, what is not applicable, and you have to interpret it properly based on your business. Okay, so every business, the interpretation more or less, globally it is same, but you have to see how it will apply.
So Saurabh, just a quick question. You come from investments, private equity, M&As, sort of a background. Tell us, do you think compliance and governance play a role in valuation of companies? The valuation, the physical financial number. I want to find out if there is a compliance premium or governance premium that gets paid at the time of valuation.
To answer your question, Rishi, we can simply see, if you look at, let's say, the current valuation of, let's say, Infosys or, let's say Tata companies, or let's say, in fact, CEAT for that matter, if you happen to see, and if you compare them with, other companies which are relatively not known or something. So there is already a perception created in the mind of investors that, these are well-compliant companies and nothing can go wrong in these companies. So that, at ground level only, that perception is there. Coming back to the specific deals and all, earlier what used to happen was you set a valuation and then you start doing diligence. So let's say something comes in financial diligence, something comes in legal diligence. If legal diligence, something is curable, then it becomes a valuation adjustment. So the, whatever is supposed to be paid, it becomes a valuation adjustment. Something which can't be done, I have seen instances where parties have said that, no, we will not do the deal till this is kind of cured or something. So there is a monetary impact on the valuation number, which is basically starts from the top, and then depending on how the diligences are happening, it just goes down.
So directly or indirectly, there is a financial penalty associated with poor governance and compliance.
Yes, definitely, yes.
Excellent. Well, we've come to the close of the first part of our discussion, where we talk about our panelists and their experience around challenges in compliance, what they are, what they've seen in their vast experience. Before we move on to part B of our discussion today, I do want to do a couple of things. First, remind you that there is a Q&A section. We will take about 5 to 10 minutes depending on the questions that we have. So feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and send us questions. If you want to direct these questions to a specific panelist based on their background, please do so, and we'll get to these questions shortly. Let me now bring audience into the panel, get their view into the conversation here. Let us bring up a small poll, a small survey, and I request all of you to take a minute or two and help us understand your views here. So the poll should be visible on your screen as I speak, and please go ahead, including the panelists, you should take the poll and let us know what you think. It's a simple multiple choice questions, a few of them. I hope you're all taking the survey. We have close to 100 participants in the audience today. I'll give it another 30 seconds. Simple poll. All right, another 20 seconds. I hope the panelists have been able to answer the questions. Thank you. 10 seconds, last 10 seconds. Please go ahead and submit your responses now. These are really invaluable for us to compile this data across our discussions and create some kinds of analysis and trends. All right, I hope all of you have been able to answer these simple questions. Thank you so much for your responses. Abhay, if you can close the poll now. Okay, well, thank you so much for responses, and we will publish a quick summary of these responses towards the end of our panel discussion today. Let's move to the second part of our discussion. How do we reboot our compliance program? The new financial year just started last month. We just came out of the COVID wave number 1, in the middle of COVID wave number 2 right now. And as we work closely with hundreds of customers around the country, one clear realization is that in the work from home scenario, organizations find it increasingly difficult to manage compliances if they are ad hoc, manual, paper-based, and people-dependent. And believe it or not, only a handful of companies in India have gone ahead and transformed their compliance management program with technology. Today, we are going to delve deeper on this subject, talk about what are the ideas in rebooting your compliance program, how should you start rethinking and transforming your compliance program, how can you use some of the tools that are available in the marketplace so that you can spend a lot more time planning, strategizing, staying on top of the latest developments, rather than running like a headless chicken from pillar to post, trying to manage notices. I mean, I'm reminded of the 7 habits of highly effective people, where urgent and important, I think in chapter 2 or 3, Stephen Covey talks about how do you manage your work, plan it, strategize it, so that you can focus on the right things. A number of compliance officers, they're constantly firefighting. And today, let me bring Vallari into the panel first, get her to talk about what her experience is in rebooting compliance program, tips, tricks, ideas on how all of us in the audience today can do things differently and take our organization's compliance program to the next level, and the role of technology in there.
So Rishi, I think I'll just slightly go back to say 15 years ago, when in the companies there were not much of technology or a technological advancement. People were managing, of course, all the compliances manually. Paper-based filings were predominantly there. Now, since I've been handling the secretarial compliances, I monitor or maybe I coordinate for the other compliances. But when we talk about secretarial compliances also, typically we talk about the ROC filings or the stock exchange filings. So earlier, we used to have all the paper-based filings, and that was a very difficult time to meet the deadlines, to ensure that we have everything, all the information to file the required return forms, then someone to go to that office, ensure that within those office timings, you pay for the challan, you get the document inverted, because otherwise, even a minute's delay, you would have to pay fine. So that was the paper-based or the typical compliance status that we had to go through. With the changes of technology, we saw that the ministry also became, technology portal. All the filings were moved to online filings, and that was probably a start of looking at compliances slightly differently. Not all ministries probably have gone to that extent as yet, but yes, with those changes that started happening, most of the ministries started having their portals or the information online. Even the filings to some extent in certain departments became online. But with that, for companies to ensure that how we manage and monitor that, that was a challenge. And I think last almost 2-3 organizations that I have worked with over about 8-10 years, I would say, companies are adopting technology platform, maybe some kind of a solution now. Maybe some companies will think that managing an Excel, sending emails and monitoring is also one way of doing it with the use of technology. But yes, with those kind of specific technology partners or platforms where you can have a centralized database of compliances, you can identify who are the right people who should be carrying out the compliances in your organization. You reach out to them with the interpretation of the right kind of compliance that they have to carry out, help them understand how they can report it back in the system, and then have those repositories updated where you can then collate and report it back to the board is, I think, the right way to look at it.
Excellent. So, Sumanta, you are one of those who've been using our platform for quite some time now. I want to bring you into the conversation, hear you on how technology helps reboot the compliance management, how organizations should start rethinking this. I mean, I take people back to 90s when most Indian organizations used to not have technology tools for managing their accounting, right? And then came Tally and the various ERPs, then accounting packages, and suddenly we realized that accountant has become so much faster and smarter, right? Just because they are using the right technology tools. Then came CRM systems, where people realized that if you have a CRM system, suddenly the sales team becomes faster and smarter. People started adopting online payroll systems, HRMS systems. Unfortunately, compliance has taken too long. What do you think? How technology helps in this rebooting?
So, Rishi, what Valerie was saying, I am saying the same thing. Over the period of time, compliance has changed drastically, and government is also now going to more digitization. And with this digitization, if you don't cope up with right now, okay, it is not the how you are keeping compliance, keeping it in Excel. It's not the compliance. Even if you see the board is not interested for the non-compliance. They also know if you run a big organization or a small organization, non-compliance will happen. They are much more interested what are the root cause analysis and how it will mitigate that. To do that thing, you need to be act smartly. Okay, if you have to handle so many apps, even if you see today a small changes in GST and over the period of time from 2016 to 2017 till today, okay, the lot of changes have happened. And even today, If you see the EAA bill, it is completely digitized. Right? The organization, even if you want to sell to a customer, and if that customer is not compliant, filing his return on time, you will not able to sell it because his GST number is blocked. Okay, so in some way you are forced to do, but if you want to get the business, if you want to really think to do the business smartly, you need to be think of a digitization. And the digitization platform are there are various digitization platform. You have to see which one is best for you, and you have to see not only digitization over the period of time, what are the various changes is coming, various rules are getting amended, various notifications are coming, which is getting impacted to your compliance, how that fit to your business. Okay, to do that thing, I think managing in simple Excel is not possible. Even if you today if you get a notice on that, how when you will give the reply, how will give the reply, who will give you the input, all these things. If today's date is a little bit complex, I think people should think of it digitization based on their size of the organization, based on the nature of the organization, and it's not all the act maybe whatever will be applicable, and they will do it step by step. And now this is the right time to look at it.
So in the last 10 years or so, the world around us has changed. More Indians today order their food on the Swiggies and the Zomatos. More Indians hail their cabs using Ubers and the Olas. We did over 2 billion digital payments last month. So we've clearly seen that when technology platforms are there, their adoption certainly is easy, and it changes the way the comfort, the confidence, the price, the cost of doing business, and so on and so forth. Saurabh, let me bring you into the conversation. In India, I think Sumant already mentioned the regulatory environment is quite fluid. Just to give you some numbers there are 2,233 websites of the government between central, state, union territories, and local, which publish regulatory updates. And a mid-sized to a large-sized company, there is no way they can ever stay on top of all these changes, because there are no subscription-based notifications available where I can go create an account, put my preferences in, and whenever changes happen, I get a notification. Today, the onus is squarely on the enterprise or the compliance officer, as the case might be, to go and look at those websites periodically. Now, in case you're not operating digitally, right? Spreadsheet, phone calls, emails, yes, they are an option. But as I said, it is like doing your accounting in a bahi khata. How do you think technology transforms this space? And how can customers or enterprises use it?
See, one thing, as you rightly mentioned, Rishi, here is that every day some or other change keeps on coming, and it is humanly impossible to track all those changes, manually. So the first and foremost point here is the technology has to come in the picture, wherein any change in any law or something, it can actually be informed, let's say by aggregators or whatever way it is. But here, first of all, if any changes has come, like say for example, classic example, I'll just give you a very simple provision of CSR activities. That itself got changed 4 or 5 times in last 1 year, as in one notification, second notification, third notification, like that. So you have to, like, where to spend your money on a very, very noble cause itself has undergone change. And on other extreme, if you see the COVID guidelines and all, which is not really the compliance, but they also keep on changing. Every district, every state has. So you need some tool wherein you can figure out this is what I need to comply with first, because what you are thinking in mind must have got changed. So here I sincerely feel that technological tools should certainly help mid, small companies, large companies in terms of keeping abreast of what is happening on those compliances. Second thing is interpretation of that, because when GST also came for a simple thing, like if you happen to go to any ice cream parlor where the ice cream is served, some parlor charge 18% GST, some parlors still charge 5% GST. Some High Court has told no, 18 is correct, some has told that 5 is correct. So you can imagine that the same rule has different interpretation. So you need expert plus technology, because the expert will interpret and the technology will kind of accumulate for us, saying that, okay, this is a rule to comply with, and this is how it is being interpreted. So both, at least the first point itself should be addressed by technology is what I feel.
Now that you've mentioned ice cream, we are all, our mouths are watering and we expect an ice cream to be delivered.
Yeah, as long as it is within our addressable market, yes.
So, Vallari, as a popular saying goes, right, we can all have our opinion, but we can't have our facts, right? Unfortunately, in the current way of doing things, there is a lot of emotion in the picture. The emotion around compliance. There are so many participants who manage different kinds of compliances. Half the time, the knowledge level is not adequate. The compliance, the way they are doing has changed. Notification has not reached them. The evidence is not clear, available centrally to be demonstrated. You are a compliance officer, right? Board looks at you to certify compliance with the law of the land. MCA has regulations around it. SEBI has regulations around it. In your opinion, what's the best way to throw this emotion out of the picture, start measuring stuff and start managing it by measurements so that a common culture of compliance can be enforced in the organization?
It's a bit tough one because when you have to comply, certainly you do get involved in understanding, interpreting. Sometimes you have to look at the case laws. Maybe there are certain instances that you have to refer. But I would say that when you have to ensure that compliance is on top, you have to be compliant with what is required. To have a proper checklist, to have a proper measure, to understand that what are the steps to be taken along with the interpretation. So that's, I think, the right way to start and ensure that it is not a haphazard way, but it's a structured way of looking at the compliances. So typically, what we do is for a listed company, and one can understand that we have, there are certain time-based compliances, which is say quarterly, half-yearly, and then there are certain event-based, which you also mentioned. So for the quarterly, there is a regular checklist which is prepared, which is reviewed. What is the applicability, what is the frequency, and then how it is to be complied, that is checked. For the event-based, also there is a checklist and it's periodically reviewed to ensure that in case if there are any events that have happened or likely to happen, what are the kind of steps that we need to take. If you say that, to ensure that it's not emotion-based and it's fact-based, it's more and more important that you have a good database, good resources where you can easily pull out all the information of what you have done in the past for the compliances, and to ensure that basis those compliances, basis those checklists, you ensure all your compliances on time. So that would be one thought I have. And interpretation is, I think, one very important thing where you have to take out emotions. You have to look at facts. You have to look at, as I said, maybe from SEBI, there are informal guidances which you can refer. There are NCLT cases or maybe those appellate tribunal cases where you can find certain solutions. Now, maybe those could be for certain extreme cases where there are too complex way of interpreting a particular provision or how to comply. But yes, that's how I will look at it, that do not go with the emotions, but purely look at the facts, figures, checklist, and ensure that you're on top of the compliance.
It's quite clear that the way our compliances are and the way large organizations work, which is multi-business, multi-locational, multi-entity, geographically spread across states with different types of entities, the compliance burden can be humongous. And it is not humanly possible to use traditional tools like spreadsheets and phone calls and emails to track to a point where you can satisfy the requirements of the board, which is evidence-based confirmation rather than just anecdotal confirmations. So,
Rishi, if I may add, one more point I would say that we do conduct periodic audits of our various locations. And that is also, I think, one area where there are certain emotions that get involved, because there is audit and auditee. So we have a different team that takes care of the audits from our legal section. And that is where I think helping them understand that it is not about a person, but it is about the organization's requirement of ensuring compliance. So to help those individuals who are carrying out the compliances, because at times they are not legal people, they are the operational people. And then to help them understand the compliance requirement, the reporting requirement, and about the audit is a challenge where I think I just thought that the emotional aspect you said comes in between. And when you have, again, a fact-based system, the audit is clearly identified. I think that also could help take out the emotional aspect.
Great point, Vallari. In fact, we as an organization provide compliance audit services, and a number of organizations reach out to you in order to get that peace of mind. Because at any point in time, they don't know what is applicable, when was it due, who was responsible, whether it got done or not, is the right evidence available. And if there are gaps, it is important to know what those gaps are so that timely interventions can be made. Otherwise, we're all sitting on a ticking time bomb. Someday it's going to explode. A flurry of notices will suddenly show up, and then the management spends a lot of its bandwidth trying to manage damage rather than run the business. So point well made. Well, it's 3:51. We have 9 more minutes into the conversation. There are a number of questions already. If you've not put in your questions, audience, I request you, invite you to bring them in. Let me open up the questions here. The first question is from Divyansh Vyas. It is for Sumanta. As per your experience, kindly put a little bit of light on how labor codes could be beneficial for FDI compliance in India. So Sumanta, you are the chosen one for this question.
So if you see the the new labor code which is coming now, all the state now the government is trying to make the proper rules, because there are a lot of acts is getting merged. It's a big hope for the outsider that India's labor problem will get solved, because they have a fear. And I can tell you, they have a fear in India, not for the compliance, they have a fear in India for our Jugaad technology. They don't trust on us. Okay, and so if you see with this new code and the way that has been interpreted, yes, lot of things will improve. FDI, it will definitely improve. Even the government, whatever they have done, the production linked incentives, that is also getting a good response. And I feel we are moving to a right direction of taking all these labor codes together, where the one labor code or the one provision is getting checked by other, which is very, very important, and which will actually create a trust among the investors.
Vallari, Saurabh, do you want to chime in? There's a question on labor codes. How does that affect FDI? So obviously, labor is a big subject, currently going through a massive transformation. 29 central acts are being subsumed under 4 codes. Draft notifications for the 4 codes at central level is already available. States are starting to publish their drafts. Any specific comments?
In my opinion, it will attract FDI, because see, one of the key challenges, and if you look at ease of doing business and some of those FDI key challenges, labor certainly has been one of the challenges for the country. And the way we are trying to simplify it, it may take some time, but eventually I think this is a very, very good step in terms of enhancing the ease of doing business. And FDI will certainly be attracted.
Vallari, anything from you?
Yeah, I would just say that this is a good move where at least a large number of acts are being collated and simplified. Now, simplification in terms of interpretation, it may take a while, but at least putting things at the right place, at one place where you can look at the required laws or required compliances at one go. I think that's a good move, and not just for the foreign parties, but even in India, it is going to be a welcome move, I would say.
Sure. And I believe, just to add my 2 cents on the subject, great move. A lot of our labor laws were written in pre-colonial times around independence. World around us has changed. 70 years plus past independence. Technology is playing a vital role. The employment types are changing. The contracts are changing. The requirements are changing. Gig labor has become an important aspect. Home-based workers, work from home, all of these things didn't exist in 1940s and 50s. And unfortunately, our labor laws continue to remain like that. And I am so happy that the current dispensation has picked it up and is taking this to the next higher level. So yes, I think the panel agrees that there will be some real benefit in this. We do have a question from Vijay Tiwari. He's looking for 2 to 3 key takeaways for IT and BPO companies in terms of compliances. Any new insights on the labor codes? I think he's bringing the attention back to labor code. But I think if any one of you, I think Vallari comes from an IT BPO sort of a background from her past. Do you want to take that up?
Well, it's been a while that I'm not with the BPO IT company. But I think because I have seen that, at least that's how I have experienced that the BPO and ITS companies have a lot of presence overseas. So to ensure that those compliances are monitored and complied is, I think, an important point. And it is challenging, but I think that's important to understand and ensure. That's one thing I would like to highlight, that whichever country that you have your operations in, ensure that you understand the presence of your entity, the compliances around it, both in terms of the entity compliance as well as the operational compliances.
Sure. I can add here, IT and BPO in general is a light touch compliance environment, does not have a factory setup. So in general, the complexity and quantity of compliances is lower than a manufacturing sector. But it's very important to comply because all the labor laws are compliances, including the Environment Protection Act of 1986, things like batteries rules, things like DG set compliances around the National Green Tribunal, Petroleum Act in case you're storing diesel above a particular number. All of those are also applicable. So it's very important to not just take it lightly, but understand it. And I think starting with a compliance audit can play an important role in understanding where you stand. We have a question from Miss MS Usha. She's asking if there is a website from where she can subscribe to get regular updates. Miss Usha, I'll take that question. You can visit our website at avantis.co.in. It is avantis.co.in. That's the India's only portal today which provides national, real-time, comprehensive and personalized regulatory updates. You can go create a free account. It takes under 2 minutes and make your preferences of what kind of compliances, what category of compliances, whether central or many states. You can choose all of that. And there are options for daily, weekly and monthly newsletters. Please pick them up and you will start receiving the free complimentary compliance updates within 24 hours typically of the release of the update. If you like mobile apps, there is a free mobile app that we have created called Rules Book, RULEZ. It is not RULES, it is RULEZ, BOOK. Please look it up on Android and iOS platform, on Play Store as well as on App Store. Please download it. You can personalize it in matter of minutes and start receiving all the regulatory updates that you would like to track. In case you're looking for even further help, please reach out to us. We'll figure out your requirement and help you. So I hope that helps answer the question. We are 2 minutes to 4 o'clock. Any closing remarks by any of our panelists now?
If I can add just the same point, which I think Saurabh also highlighted, that interpretation is one thing, and the changes that have happened or the way the laws are dynamic and newer notices or circulars are being issued by the government, to keep a track of that is very, very important, because these days, because of WhatsApp, before, I think many a times I have seen that before even it is put up on the government website, you have the circular on WhatsApp. It's just available easily. And so the management also expects you to understand and be ready with the actual compliances to be done by the company immediately. So that's, I think, an important area, and technology can certainly be of a great help WhatsApp is one thing, but with the interpretation, with the actions to be taken, with maybe a brief analysis of what exactly the newer amendment is I think very, very important. And so I think technology will certainly be of great help here.
So Vallari, I can add a point to that. I've been talking to a lot of compliance officers across the country. One common observation is that 80 to 85% of their day-to-day time goes in just running around, just chasing things, just firefighting. And until the time they free themselves up and they clear their plate, there is hardly any time for strategizing and planning. And that's what you are talking about as to interpretations is basically strategizing and planning. There are so many things that are changing. I mean, today labor codes are changing. Believe it or not, 80-90% of the compliance officers and CHROs are not fully familiar with what is the impact of the changes in their work environment. And if they are not seeking help, chances are it will be staring them in the face and they won't know how to react and respond. And again, then you will be chasing somebody's tail. So I think it's very important to clear up the plate so that you have time for important matters rather than constantly chasing urgent matters. Sumanta, Saurabh, any parting comments?
So to adding what Valerie is telling, now it's a time where you have to make a paradigm shift of your thought process. Okay, now the government is also moving to digitization. You also have to see how to work smartly, because what Rishi are telling that most of the compliance officer is running from the pillar to post, and what I feel, you have to make it develop a culture within the organization that every transaction has a compliance. Okay, it is not the compliance officer's job to go sit the compliance, fill something. Okay, so you have to, because this is a process, and in this process, and that is the expectation from the management. If you see, they want to see what you have done to implement it. Okay, so the more fast you can do, the more you can see for the digitization, it will help you out at the end of the day.
Excellent. Well, it's a minute past 4 o'clock. Thank you so much, panelists, for making the time, sharing your valuable experience, talking to us about the challenges, solutions, tips, tricks, and I'm sure our audience are also thanking you, although you can't hear them, but I do receive a number of calls after the event where people talk about them. So thank you so much for taking the time. And I do want to thank all the audience. You've been a wonderful sport. Almost 100 people today have been there for most part of the conversation today. I hope you found it useful and valuable, and we look forward to our next conversation. So until then, stay safe, stay healthy, stay out of the COVID trouble, and I really hope we can put this behind us soon and get back to normal business. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.